hey, we're in the paint room, so it's time to do one of these guys. And I started out by doing a bit of erosion work on this thing, and we have a little bit of footage of that. But what I did was basically tear away some of these proud spots. I just used a sander attachment for the angle grinder, those little flappy sander things, and just sort of attacked it. I did it with a little bit of reasoning. I hit the proudest spots where you would have the greatest angle, the greatest likelihood of it chipping off in that spot. That's why I did it where I did it. So I'm just going to kind of attack this thing with paint. What we're going to be doing, or what I'm going to be doing, is I'm going to use this as a style panel. That's what I call it. But what it means is that I'm going to make this thing up as we want the entire room to look. Now, for the other ones, I won't do that. What I'll do is I'll do some preliminary painting on them, and then after installation, I'll do a lot of the water drip and stuff like that so that it all works together in the room. You don't want to have a water drip start at the top of the head and stop here when there's stacked stone above it and stacked stone below it, because the water should be coming from somewhere above, run down that stone face, hit this guy, drip through him, and then continue below that. So, so this will be a disjointed piece by itself. But we're going to use it as a reference so that as we move around the room, we can look at density, color, everything else, and we'll have that reference point. So we'll keep this guy as our master. What I've got over here is, this is Manhattan Mist, Stone Sierra, Desert Bisque, and a flat clear coat. I'll use this in between stone coats.
Wait, Desert Bisque? Like some kind of soup?
Yeah, like that, like crawfish or like a lobster bisque, except desertier and sandier. So
I want that job.
But
I quit.
So
I'm eating paint now.
The between sand coats, this stone finish stuff, even after it's dry, it's kind of loose on the surface. It doesn't seal up very well unless you, well. So what we do as a fixative, or a fixer, a binder, is to go over it with a clear coat between colors, and it's a flat so that I'm not adding anything I don't want to add. Also, by the way, one thing I will not do with this is, in the end, we may want to have a bit of wetness to the walls, just a little bit of creepy, and so that I would do with like a semi-gloss, thinned out polyurethane, and I'll let that move across the surface, and that way it'll look like some bits of the wall are still wet. We're not going to do that today. So let's just start attacking this thing. Okay, so one of the reasons why I'm not using one stone paint color on this thing is that, honestly, they're all too uniform. And what I want to do is make this thing look like an actual piece of stone where it's striated, where it has strata, and some other stuff. I put way too much paint on this. We're going to have to let it dry. So this is the stone sienna right now, and I'm just going to do this to add some variation. This whole thing is kind of about variation, but it needs to be cohesive. So, and there'll be one exception to that, which is I'm going to start adding some strata. Grab that guy. Using this as a paper mask. I'll do it a little off angle. And yes, it is a bit subtle. That's okay. We'll come back over this and draw all this together. All right, so I've spread a couple of layers on real quick. Probably a good spot to let this dry for a couple of minutes. I'm going to touch up, not that one, not that one. I put the wrong cap on that. I'll do that. Sort of airbrushing with a spray can here. All right, so I'm going to turn our fan on here, and I'm going to let this dry for just a couple of minutes. We're going to come back in and start attacking it with more crap. Hey, real quick, while paint's drying, I'm going to do this really quickly. I'm going to take my finger and rub in these areas where we scratched the surface out. It's a little bit less skinned, but I'll use the semi-liquid paint as a bit of a filler, and that should help blend that into everything else. And I am going to have to touch that up a little bit. Got acne scars. And having the stone be a little bit porous is not going to look weird because it's sandstone. If it has little voids in it or something else got eroded, particles pop out, whatever, that's still natural. So that's okay. Hey, all right, so next thing I'm going to do is a bit counterintuitive. It's upside down. I don't know why this works exactly. I have some idea, but who cares? It works. We're going to start upside down, do drip effects on it, then flip it upright, and then do another round of drip effects. So here goes that. Oh, I've got a spray water bottle with a little bit of soap in it so that it doesn't bead. This isn't completely dry yet, so I'm cheating. Tiny bit of soap. Hopefully we'll keep the water from beading. Should be enough to help us work anyway. And then in here I've got maybe a half an ounce of latex paint mixed with about 4 or 5 ounces of water. So it's pretty heavily thinned out. I may actually thin this out a little bit more momentarily, but we're going to start with this. So get some idea of where I want my water to go. Let's just start over here for right now. Wet that guy down. Yeah. He is a bit drippy. And that is okay. Normally I'd have a fan on and I can brush this out a little bit. I will, let's see. Try and keep him in here. Can you grab me a chip brush?
Yeah.
And part of what this is doing is adding shadow. so that I end up with dark spots where the shadows will go. We'll come back over this with a round of water again. I'm just trying to break this up a little bit to get rid of these spots. If I let this thing dry overnight, this wouldn't happen, but I'm way too impatient for that, so. Now, one of the other things that I've done is if I see an effect that I like, I can just lay this thing flat, put a fan on it, and freeze everything right where it is. So that's something to do. So what I'm doing right now is the water's beating a little bit too quickly, so we're gonna have to let that sit overnight. But there's still something else I can do. What I can do is do a heavy drip, basically starting right here, and watch where he goes, and then use that to my advantage. I can even take this line right here, split it, and then again I can freeze this where it looks good. And you notice this pigment is following the same line back down. Okay, I definitely like where these are going. I am going to freeze this momentarily. So I'm just going to do a quick hit on each one of my lines. Where I like it. And then I'm going to lay him down, and I'm probably going to hit him with a heat gun, again, because of my impatience. All right. So, old paper towel, get rid of some of this water. So, yeah, this is going to take a second. We'll speed this up for you, but what we're going to do is basically dry this off. I'll hit it with a heat gun, turn the fan on, and we'll make this happen. All right, so I'm just slowly establishing drips where I'll pull this in, make something happen, and then sort of freeze it in place with the heat gun. And that is working pretty well right now. Kind of adapt as we go. And we're going to flip this guy over and do him the other way. So, now I'm not going to rotate it this way. I still have liquid paint on here, so I don't want there to be a big swirl as I rotate it the other way. So actually, Matt will help me, but I'm going to go flat with it and then hand it off to Matt. Matt will take it upright. There we go. Reposition his little butt. We'll work him in the opposite direction, doing the same thing. Now, I do realize that most of my paint is running off. That's fine. It's leaving behind stuff that does what it does. I'm still ending up with spots that just want to, where I open the foam up, it just wants to bead. So I'll have to go back in and just airbrush that or something. Okay, I am probably going to lay this guy down, dry the table off, and start darkening the eye holes, and, well, all the recesses. And then we'll do a little bit of play faux work after that. I'll also freshen up these spots where the erosions occurred, so they're not quite as old as the rest of it. So that should take care of some of this beading problem that's happening in the same place. Okay, I'm going to sort of mask this off with my hand and throw a little bit of new paint on very lightly where the chipped out areas are to kind of freshen them up. If this were metal, this would be where I would do a dry brush or something to see that a fresher surface has been exposed. In stone, it gets a lot trickier, and this may or may not work perfectly, and we'll have to do more stuff to make it, I'm making this up, so you do understand that.
I could pretend to be helpful and help you with the paper mask. Incidentally, torn paper can be a very good mask for doing any kind of stone.
Oh yeah,
edge
marble,
lines.
marble, slate, all
Hey.
that type of line, torn paper, that's it.
Look how natural that is. What do you want to?
I've got all three areas
I
done
was
while
too
you were.
slow, so I'm useless and just taking up space.
I will blend this in a little bit with some of our gray,
I'll just get out of the way.
and then I'll do another little bit of water over the new stuff so that it ties in. It doesn't look like it was chipped yesterday. I want this to have chipped 100 years ago rather than 500 years ago. Yeah, I'm splitting hairs, but when you look at it, it talks to you and tells you what's right and what's not. Okay, back to water drip. I will heat gun this for a moment to kind of get it to set and cure. Actually, I will seal this with a little bit of our clear flat. Kind of get it to marry itself with the old. Back to the ever-present heat gun. I'm doing this pretty lightly. I just, the flat that I just put on is a bit of a lacquer and I don't want it to bubble. So I'm trying to move quickly with the heat gun. I've just showed you what we did with the water drip effects. Rather than resetting the cameras to go from a high shot to a low shot and all this kind of stuff and driving Matt nuts, I am going to do this off camera. You've seen what it is already, and we'll come back tomorrow and look at where we are. I'm just going to run a little bit of drip marks over the fresh stuff that I just did. And then tomorrow we'll play with a little bit of organic aging on top of that. Hey, it's tomorrow now. So we're going to start playing with this thing a little bit. We've got some moss. Here, I'll show this guy. We've got this moss. This actually came from a sheet of moss. This is all synthetic moss. For the actual, we may actually use an expanding natural moss. It's cheap, you can get it at pet stores. This is a little bit more expensive. Either way, hobby store for this stuff, pet store for the other type of moss. And what I'm going to do is just use a little bit of contact cement. I didn't look very hard. I've got some barge cement somewhere, but I'm just going to go ahead and use the cheap stuff. And I am just going to paint a little bit of contact cement in there. And this stuff will dissolve the paint, so don't put it where you don't want it, and dab, don't brush, so that it doesn't destroy your nice paint job. So all right, so I think we're about done here. I've got a little tendril that I've put in. I'm just putting a little extra moss here to hide our crimes where I had a little patch of glue. And basically, I think that's about it. I think we're done. I got to say, I'm actually pretty happy with that. So anyway, general style panel, that'll be our reference, or if we want to go a little bit lighter with it, and that's possibly what we might want to do depending on the lighting in the room, we'll just do this same thing a little bit lighter, but it gives us a reference. And if we're going to have 2 or 3 different artists working on this at the same time, it lets everybody have a common reference. And also, one of the other things we'll do is to avoid having blocks of individual people's styles. We'll shuffle everybody throughout the room. That's one of our little tricks. And that's it. So anyway, if you have any other questions or comments, please feel free. Leave comments below, and otherwise hit the subscribe button. It's over there.